Welcome back to Second Nature. I am so fired up for this episode because you guys know that I'm all about the cross-pollination, and one of my best sources for bringing in minds to help cross-pollinate the outdoor industry is, of course, Red Bull. Bringing in one of my OG Red Bull homies, Kaylee. Welcome to Second Nature.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So we had a chance to work together for a few years at Red Bull. I was on the athlete marketing team. You were on the social team. We've both gone on to do bigger and better things, but certainly we share a lot of those original key learnings. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about with respect to Red Bull, but then also everything that we've had a chance to do since Red Bull. And I think this is going to be really helpful for both brands that are trying to figure out their social game, as well as athletes and creators who are just looking for some additional insight to be successful. I think we should probably just start at the very beginning of the whole Red Bull thing. I think that some of the things people get wrong about Red Bull across the board is that, like, Red Bull is successful because they're a successful business and they just throw money at every single thing, and that's why it works. When I feel like actually it's the stuff that didn't cost money that ends up being, in most cases, the most successful. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I always joke at Red Bull, people think I had a ton of money, ton of budget, but we operated, at least on the social team, like a startup. You know, we didn't have big budgets. Everybody thought we did, but we didn't. And so I learned, it's like getting a master's. All my friends went to grad school. I went to Red Bull, in how to make content, good content, on a budget or very creatively. And so we were going out and working with just, our own phones before that was even a thing, or hiring small crews, just us and a camera guy, and going out and creating stuff with our athletes. And the one big benefit I learned from that is you just get to work so much faster when you don't actually have these big budgets and these big shoot days. You're able to go and turn out so much content so much faster and find out what works. And that's like the key to social media that I really learned while being over there is you don't need to overthink it so much. Like, you can go lower budget and just figure out what works, move faster, and see what stands out quicker.
I've been talking to some people lately about the concept of the car wash. I don't know if you ever called it this, but yeah. Right?
Content car wash.
So for the listeners, maybe give a little primer of what the content car wash is all about, with respect to maybe an athlete, for example.
Yeah, the content car wash is the idea of you set up one day, and it could be with one athlete or a bunch of athletes, and we would have a set of formats that we would want them to come and film, and we would set up one shoot, one set, or we'd have a couple different rooms for them, and they would come in, and in the course of a couple hours per athlete or a whole day for the crew that was there, they would film, 5, 6, 7 different formats that were great for Instagram, YouTube, TikTok once it started. And it was just this way to maximize time with limited resources. And we used it all the time at Red Bull. We would set up shoot days, have a couple athletes come in, film a ton of formats. It was highly efficient, and actually not that complicated to get done because everybody's just, you come in, you do this one format. It's almost like a press junket for your athletes within an actual brand. And you get 40, 50 assets in one day that you can program and plan out a whole calendar around.
It's so fun for the athletes. I know that, they would come to the office anyways just to check out Red Bull or go to the high performance, or now called APC center, to train. But then knowing that there was going to be a fun little shoot that they were going to do while they were there, it made them even more excited to come through because they were going to get featured on Red Bull socials, and everything was kind of done for them. Show up, stand here, and then do these things for us. We got a format already in mind where you don't have to think about it. But what I think a lot of brands could probably do is to take that exact same approach. What is your protocol for when an athlete comes to visit your audience? What is your protocol for when you're at an event with an athlete? I mean, you were all over the place, both in the office and then out in the field and at events and stuff like that. And you had a playbook, the formats would certainly change. The athletes' disciplines would change. But talk a little bit more about maybe the formats and how you built all that part out so that you would know, hey, when we're at an event, we do this. When you have somebody in, we do this. How did that come together?
Yeah, I think the best way to look at it is through actual live events. When I worked at Red Bull, I was the event lead for social for Burton US Open, Vulcan Pipe Pro, a lot of those types of things. And what we would do is we would be I'd say 80% prepared, 20% see what happens. And so we'd do pre-production before we'd go, where we'd say, okay, what are the formats we can get day of? What athletes do we have coming in? Who's good on camera, or who's funny, who's more serious, kind of plan all that out and attach formats and ideas to those athletes before you get there. And so we would come up with, especially for live events, we would do fun, like, what does it look like to have the host go out, who's hosting the live show, and interview contestants, interview people who are sitting and watching. What would a format like that look like? What does it look like to capture the athletes right after they're coming out of the water, or right after they've just gone down the half pipe? What does that look like to get people in the moment, and how do we turn that over quickly? And so all that was planned for, and we would send out our crew day up to go and do that. But then there was that 20% of like, okay, what can we just randomly capture? How do we just get coverage? And think of that as like being a fly on the wall of an event, or of the day the athlete comes into your office. And just having somebody there capturing moments, being ready to do what we call producing, just having your phone out and ready to go, having a camera out, getting everything. No moment is not potential content. I think that's the biggest thing, is people under capture. The best thing you can do when you have an athlete come in or have a shoot day is just over capture. You don't know what could turn into behind the scenes content or a funny trending audio piece of content. And so plan for that 80%, have formats, things that, especially on social media right now, Instagram and TikTok, everything's going very format based content around, like listicles, or having your athlete actually talk about a certain event or recap something and give their perspective on it, works really well. And then have that 20% of, let's just see what happens day of, and figure out how we can turn that into content right after the fact.
The spray and pray approach, at least in photography, is called. But I feel like a lot of brands in the outdoor industry specifically are a lot more of the spray and pray. Like, oh, we're going to an event, we're going to film, maybe them crossing the finish line, or them at an aid station, or, maybe something in the pits before or after the race. But the idea of the format of having like 5 videos that you're going to shoot no matter what, that you could repeat at every single event. I mean, think about going to, those events that you listed and having to rely on contest results to be able to make decent content. You would have probably come home empty-handed more often than not. So the format that you built, or the formats that you built, kind of ensured no matter what happened, you'd have some level of success. And if you had a good result, then even better.
Oh yeah, the stress I would feel if we didn't have formats in place or some sort of plan. And I feel like that's a thing people miss, is I still hear this now, is they think they can just throw up a camera and they'll get what they need. Unless you're a reality TV producer who can go through hundreds of hours of footage, like, that's just not the case. Social moves so fast. You need to stage a lot of it or plan for a lot of it. And I also think when you're working with athletes, everybody likes to know what's happening beforehand. And so if they know the questions, or if they have a social format they can reference, a frame of reference that's already live, either on your channel or on somebody else that you kind of want to replicate, it makes it all go so much faster. Everybody feels more prepared, and you can get a lot more done in an hour versus having a camera just floating around the office for 8 hours and trying to make sense of it after the fact.
I want to go down this format rabbit hole a little bit with you, because I think people get the general idea of that you want to have like some sort of framework of what you're going to film when you go to an event. But how do you think about creating, take any event, but how do you think about creating these formats so you can sort of replicate when it comes to working with brands? Because obviously, we'll fast forward a little bit, but you've worked with a lot of other brands besides Red Bull. Now you are consulting for all kinds of different brands in every single category. How do you develop those different formats for different brands? What are the things that you're thinking of, or how do you decide which ones to go with? How does that whole format practice come together?
Yeah, to me, it's all about, we want to have an ownable IP. So something that it's so hard to cut through on social media. You see a lot of brands taking like comedic or trend approaches, and it's funny, it's great, but it's really hard to actually cut through and have people remember you. The fastest way to be remembered right now on social is to have something ownable, something that people come back and go, oh, I saw that once, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I'm going to follow that brand because I know I'm going to keep getting that content. So how you come up with that is, it's honestly like, YouTube's a really good inspiration, like looking how people package up YouTube content, and then also just scrolling Instagram and TikTok and seeing how people transfer that into a more of a shorter form a format, but depending on the brand I'm working with, if they're wanting to take a more serious approach or they're willing to go more comedic, I start it in an actual pitch process. I go and I look through what's already happening on social media. There's some really good formats out there right now, especially on the street. Interview formats is probably the easiest, most tangible way I can sum up what a format is. There's a series out there right now called Are You Okay on Instagram and TikTok, and it's just kind of blown up. And it's a really good example of what it looks like to take an idea of, we're just going to interview people on the street around this very specific type of question set, and then give them a verdict at the end of the day. That's the format. The format is just interview people under this type of format ideas, and then we're going to give something for them at the end to take away from it. And then packaging it up with, a fun graphics package. It's the edit style. It's edited fast. It has things flying in and out. That's the format. And so for different brands, I go down the rabbit hole of what can that look like. If you're a serious brand, you might do a much more stripped back, serious interview style format with, you can stage podcasts. Like, this is a real one, but people do that all the time. Or you can make it look like you're actually talking to somebody. Or I have a format right now we just developed with a lighting company where we go and we interview some of the biggest pros in film and TV lighting. And so we sit them down. That one's much more serious. We actually sit them down in a beautiful setup in a film cage. That's where they keep all their equipment. And we ask them really big questions about their career and get them to tell their stories. And then we package that up into 90-second or less pieces of content. And so when you're coming at it, I would look to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok for inspiration of what's out there, and then break it down per the brand of, am I serious? Am I more comedic? What talent do I have to work with? And what resources do I have to actually make this happen? If you don't have budget, you're going to do things that are much more stripped back and simple, could be shot on a phone. If you do have budget, you might go and actually sit down with talent and set up a whole set of cameras and mics and all that.
I think one of the interesting things about doing that research ahead of time too is that you can kind of find clues to lead you into that. For example, I was working with a brand a while ago, and we were going through social formats and we did exactly what you said. And we were going down trying to find different ways to kind of approach product releases. And one of the things that we found was there was like this marshmallow company, and they would make videos about packing people's orders, but the orders were always different, like the ingredients they used or the way that they packed it or whatever. And so it's sort of like this visually stunning product. And then the way they packaged it also gave, like shouted out the person who actually ordered it. So then more people ended up ordering more stuff, which actually accomplished the Marshmallow brand's original goal of getting more sales. But people were then ordering to see if they could get their order shown on the thing. And we saw just mega engagement on those posts, as well as the views and everything like that. We're like, oh, well, we could do the exact same thing with the way that, we pack stuff for our orders, and we could tell that story. And it would be such a cool way to maybe even sneak in a new product and then, use that format for that,
Yeah. People think they need to recreate the wheel too. They think they got to come up with something big and different. You don't. You just need to go. Your differentiator is your product or is your personality that you infuse in it if you're an athlete. And so if you go and you find inspiration on TikTok, when you said that example, it made me immediately think of there's this gum brand on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And all he does.
Underbrush or something like that?
Yeah. Yes. I actually bought it. I was
it worked.
a victim of the marketing. But the founder literally just goes on every day and does vlogs of him making the gum. And it's really like, it's kind of like ASMR content, how it's very soothing to watch him making the gum content and then talking over just his journey to do it. It's so simple and it's not that hard to execute, but it has this effect of when you're repetitive in what you're doing and you don't need to recreate anything, it's a format people just understand right off the bat. It makes you just kind of drop in on the content. I call it like dropping into a hole on the content. And so then you could just scroll and watch a bunch and then you get invested and then you start commenting and they comment back. It's exactly what you said. It creates this very natural community effect. And then suddenly you're selling product and you're the #1 store on TikTok Shop and you don't even know how you got there.
That's how it's done. How do you think about building formats with intent of stuff like that? Where some of the stuff probably is very sales focused. Some of it's more engagement focused, community focused. Like, you must be thinking about that while you're creating these formats. And I guess the real question is, like, do you need to have sort of different goals with each one of the formats to do that? Or how do you think about sort of the overall outcome? Because I feel like the problem is that everybody wants all the things. I want sales, I want community, I want engagement, I want follower growth, I want all the things all in the same time. Just make me the silver bullet. But I can't imagine it works that way. So how are you thinking about how you actually create these and the jobs that the formats do?
Yeah, I look at the different, you're talking like top of funnel brand awareness versus how do I convert people to purchase. I actually don't look at that on the format level. I look at that from the tactical, what are they doing level. So my formats, I look at this is casting my biggest net. I'm trying to get as many eyeballs. I'm trying to get people to start to recognize, knowing that Instagram and TikTok don't serve content to your followers anymore. I'm trying to just get them to recognize me when they're scrolling. And if you do a good job of that, by the third time I see your video, fourth time, I start to associate your brand with a certain feeling. From that, you can convert somebody to a follower. Once somebody's in your pipeline, then you're looking at how do I convert them? And that becomes different tactics. That's how am I responding to my community when they comment? Do I have certain things I offer that make them want to tune in? Like I've been trying to test Easter egg strategies and you're seeing some brands do this, where you drop in content or in the captions, or there's some really cool brands like Away does this with their close friends list, where they will actually release things early with discounts on their close friends list. So it's finding unique ways to take somebody who, I got engaged through the formats and the content, or I saw you from an ad, and then I move in to become a follower. And then what are you doing that makes me want to engage off there? And I think Instagram kind of does the best at this, because they have the close friends list and broadcast channels and all these things that make it really easy to move a community. But to me, that's much more your community engagement strategy, and then your unique ways that you're trying to surprise and delight somebody by, join our close friends list, or if you comment on this post, we'll send you a secret code using like ManyChat integrations, things like that to get discounts.
Ooh, talk to me about ManyChat, because I've been hearing about this, but I don't know anything about it.
ManyChat, we love ManyChat. It's a DM automation tool for Instagram, and there's other ones out there now. ManyChat's kind of the first one. And some people don't like ManyChat. I love ManyChat. I think it's the way the platform's going to move, because they're never going to integrate links. They're not going to probably let you add a link into your Instagram posts. But it's this way, if you comment on a post, say, the best example is fashion. If somebody's like, you want my outfit, comment shop, then it'll automatically DM you a link from that creator that says, here's all the links, and it'll go to their LTK or something else where you can actually go and purchase. And that's just the surface level of what it can do. They've expanded their feature set to do so many things. You can build an email list within ManyChat now, where it actually, you can have full conversations. You can do form intake through ManyChat, where it just talks back and forth with the person. So if you're trying to get signups for an event, like, you can just have it do all of that through Instagram DM. There's just endless opportunities, and you're keeping people on platform for the part that is important. And then when they really want it, when they want to go make that recipe or buy that product or get that discount, they're going to click off on the link. It's just a much more natural way than link in bio. I'm so don't use link in bios in the way that we used to anymore. I just recommend against it, because why would you, when you have something that's going to also boost you in the algorithm, because it's going to see you getting more comments, and then it's also going to increase the amount of people who are in your DMs engaging with you.
Oh, this is amazing. This is the missing element in my social game right now, because I will admit to you that I am a post and ghost, because I'm trying to actually protect my mental health as a creator, especially in like what I do, teaching people stuff. Everybody wants to like come up with a reason why they shouldn't put their effort and energy into learning something, and they will come up with very interesting reasons to discount you or push back on what you're saying, or just whatever. And and honestly, it's not that bad. It's like, for every, 100 positive, like, oh, thank you, this is so useful, there's like one it's just like, you don't know what you're talking about. But it's like that one that really sends you down the spiral. And I feel like managing that side of it as a creator / athlete / whatever is really challenging. And the post and ghost mentality, while not healthy for engagement in my channel, and I'm probably missing a bunch of stuff, but also like it's been my survival strategy too. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it especially if you're an athlete and you need to promote something off platform, or if you have a podcast. I see podcasts use it all the time as a tactic to get people to watch new episodes or tune in. It allows you to just take away part of the engagement. Like, I don't have to go and comment and reply back to everyone. I can just make a really good piece of content promoting it, and if people are interested, they can get it. They can just comment and it'll automate that for you. And it makes the community just, people also like accessibility. They like things to be easy, lower friction. And it's one of those things that, one, it's going to make your life easier. It's going to promote the podcast for you. But two, it's just less friction for the people who find you and become interested.
So does ManyChat, so it works on Instagram because I've seen people do it left, right, and center. Does it also work on other platforms too, like TikTok?
Not on TikTok yet.
Just
I don't know
Instagram.
if TikTok will let us, but hopefully. TikTok's like slowly rolling out link features and things like that, but maybe we'll get it there soon. I do think the platforms have like really differentiated themselves, so it's kind of a thing I think Instagram is just going to continue to own and foster, but it'd be a dream if TikTok got it.
I would love to hear your take on TikTok, actually, because I think a lot of brands out there are like, should we have a TikTok? Should we do a TikTok? And I know that there are some brands out there that have really seen like tremendous growth or big opportunities. You know, my friend London does this thing called Final Boss. It's like a sour snack thing that they do. And he's
People
totally
love sour snacks on TikTok.
Yeah, he's crushing it. He's absolutely crushing it on the sales side of things. And they know what they're doing. But I feel like there's almost nothing worse than being a brand experimenting social in public when you don't know what you're doing. And so I think that probably rightly so, a lot of brands are afraid of TikTok and don't maybe understand the value or opportunity there. What kind of conversations are you having with brands when they ask? I'm sure you're getting that question a lot. Like, should we have a TikTok?
Yeah. And my immediate answer is yes. But I always take a step back right after that. First, I have to say, one, I'm not an oracle, so I don't know what's going to happen when the sale finally goes through and there's the license algorithm. And like, we don't know where the platform's fully going to go. But with all that, just hanging in the air, TikTok is, one, the best app to test in public. People expect messiness on that platform. So a lot of brands go in there and think they need to be buttoned up and polished and have everything together. It's like, no, that is the platform where people go and start bad and nobody judges you for it. One. Two, it's the lowest execution style of all the platforms. You don't need to do anything crazy premium to be on there. You can just throw up your phone, talk to camera. It's very approachable and attainable for brands who are strapped on resources. And then the third is it's where content is moving. So whether TikTok stays the leader or it becomes somebody else, Instagram takes over, whatever, we don't know yet. But TikTok is the leader right now of what is interesting in vertical content. So being on there and just learning it and understanding it and starting to build some sort of exposure on the platform is good for any brand. You shouldn't be ignoring where the trends are going or avoiding it. Also, certain brands do better, or it just makes more sense. If you're a product that makes sense on TikTok Shop, usually products that aren't, they're lower to medium priced products, things that a general consumer could go and buy. TikTok Shop is just such a major opportunity zone for brands, especially if we're talking like what's popping off. Like you mentioned sour candy. Candy goes like crazy on TikTok. One random thing. But so do things like protein and fitness gear and things like people love that stuff on TikTok because they want to buy it and put it in their homes or go and try it. And so it has this place where the integration for shopping is so simple. It's you see a video from somebody who makes a post, which they have an affiliate program within the actual portal. So if you're like, I want people to make content about my product, but I don't know how to do it, they make it pretty easy for you to slowly dabble in it and send your product to creators who are good at making content. And then everything's easily integrated. So there's just a little box at the top. You can click it and buy the product within 2 clicks. And everything feels very legitimate. I think Instagram tried to do this with Instagram Shop and it felt scammy. And so nobody really adopted it versus TikTok. People buy on that platform. They know, they trust what's going on there and they trust the creators who are making content about it. So it's a great place whether you are ready to jump into your own organic strategy, which is one lane of it, or you just want to get on there so that other creators can start talking about your product and it's really easy to buy it. It's just a really good place to try to move product and see if you can open up another revenue model for your business. And I don't think you should be sleeping on it or avoiding it because you're scared it's going to be too hard. It's the lowest of the platforms to enter and to learn quickly.
We did a podcast not too long ago with Jonathan Levitt about affiliate marketing. And what we were talking about was a much deeper level of consideration when it went around that stuff. But on TikTok, it does seem like you can just actually be there and have your product on TikTok Shop. And people that you might not have even had access to or even known existed can take your product and put it in front of millions of people. And all of a sudden, you've somehow found yourself in a very interesting position. I'm sure there's more than a few cases of, people that didn't even have like a built out affiliate strategy, but just showed up on TikTok Shop and it just went nuclear.
Yeah. Because it goes two ways of you can go and seek out affiliates or people can just find your product and say they're interested and opt in. And there's this kind of weird realm of UGC creators on TikTok where because the algorithm is so random, you get these creators who just create in bulk around products. And maybe that's not every brand's, goal to be with somebody who's just creating in bulk. But there's also a bonus in that is because when they take off, these creators will get millions of views and they'll move thousands of dollars in product from one post. So it is kind of this, quantity game of I'm putting out my product to a couple random people and we're going to see what happens. But when it hits really well. And when it starts to hit and it snowballs, if you're able to see a moment happen, you see a creator kind of take off and you go, we need to double down. We're going to find more. We're just going to put more money into these creators. You create this snowball effect on TikTok where their algorithm, once it sees somebody is interested, if I get served a content that has a product link in it and I like it or I save it or I just watch the whole thing, TikTok will just, over the next 3 months, send me subtly videos from other creators about that product. And it's done differently from other apps. Like Instagram, I feel like within 1 week, I'll get ads all the time. And once I stop engaging, it'll stop serving them to me. TikTok, I think, understands that people need multiple touch points to purchase. So they extend that window and I get served content over multiple months about a product. And by the 15th video I've seen, I can't tell you how many times I purchased crap stuff from TikTok because it's so well done the way that they use creators to market. And brands should be leveraging that. And if you understand the psyche of how the algorithm works, you can really use it to your advantage and try to create snowball growth just from people clicking on your product link in TikTok.
What I love about the first 30 minutes of this podcast is basically every single thing that we've talked about is a very, very actionable strategy that anyone with a cell phone could do. There's been no talk of budget. There's been no talk of production facilities. There's no talk of having an office where, all of this stuff is really easy to do with somebody that's equipped with literally a camera in their pocket. Like you don't need to have anything crazy. Surely if you had, the backing of an agency like yours that could come in and just make it simple would be pretty great too. But like all this stuff is actually just more about knowing what to do as opposed to just throwing money at the problem, which is exactly where we started of like, actually the success came from doing it, not hiring people to do the work for us.
Yeah.
I think it's such an interesting approach that like you can actually, and that's why you see these creators coming out of thin air because it's like, you don't need all this stuff to be able to do it. If you understand formats, if you understand community, if you understand content, you can pull this off and you can punch above your weight. Right. I'd love to talk a little bit more about, you moved on from Red Bull and you started working for this company called Proteus Motion, which I actually know because my gym has one. Shout out Gem Fitness. But this was I think that next step after Red Bull is a really interesting one because you have to take all the things that have been sort of like part of your world and then adapt it into a new place. And some brands are better at others at like allowing that to happen. But also it challenges you to kind of like rethink your assumptions that you've been working with for so long and then reapply it to a new problem. And I think one of the things that I saw from your time at Proteus, you had more of a remote team, right? Mm-hmm. And you were kind of like trying to stand this thing up. I think you walked into what, like 1 or 2,000 followers on their social channel, and
1,000 on Instagram, none on YouTube, or none on TikTok.
Wow. And, you know, you obviously, the end of the story is that everything worked out great, but you know, you had to do a lot of things to like get them up and running. And I think one of the most important things to talk about is that you did this organically. Same thing. Like you weren't paying to like boost everything to the moon. You actually just did the work and built it out. So how did you think about, you know, you don't have an office like Red Bull has, you are a bit more remote. What was your sort of approach to building that content strategy for social when you've got people just spread out all over the place?
Yeah. I think one layer to add to it too is that Proteus is a really expensive piece of fitness equipment. So it's not just something anybody can go and purchase off of TikTok Shop. It's a long tail sales cycle to buy it. Somebody has to really think about it multiple months. They do special deals. And so when I came in to try to promote this, I'm like, okay, how do I promote something that you can't just buy easily? One, and then two, that's pretty complex. It's a complex piece of sports equipment that has all this data tracking and resistance technology that needs explanation. So to me, I saw social media as this opportunity to, one, not necessarily talk about ourselves, because people do not like when you talk about your own brand. They don't really care. But to create a hub for our community, for those who already liked it, and then to shock and awe those who hadn't seen it, because the machine is really, you've been on it. It looks like a robot, robotic arm. It's very visually interesting when you see it on there. So my thought when I started, which for the first year it was just me, I had no one else. It was just me running the channel, and then by the second year I got some help. Was how do I get the most low lift content? And that was really to go through the facilities who had it. So I built all these personal relationships with like Gem Fitness and some of these other sites that had the machine. And I created I guess you could call it an actual UGC program. These were users and owners of the machines, and had them give me content or remotely produced content through them, which is something a lot of brands can use with either creators or influencers or athletes in their network. Remotely producing content is a huge opportunity zone if you can't actually fly out or don't have the money to fly out and bring a crew to somebody. So I would just have these sites send me content and I would post that. And this was when Reels was just taking off. And I saw that opportunity of what are the platforms wanting right now. And I just went hard on video content, Reels content that showed the machine in action, that was shocking, content with pro athletes, because we were getting some pro athletes on the machine right in the very beginning. And it blew up naturally. And once it started to get traction, then I converted into the community side, where we made an ambassador program. We had so many people who just like wanted to go and sell the machine themselves. So I developed an ambassador program. I made a community platform that we use Circle. It's a community platform. It's not like School, or another one people use, where we would actually move all the trainers and the coaches and the people who loved our product onto an off platform, off social media place to talk about the product, do webinars, be a resource for them. My whole thing was like, you need to be really available. If you have a product, any product, but if your product's complex and expensive, you need to be really available on social media and have easy touch points off when people really need help. And so it was those three things of, one, a social strategy that shocked people when they saw it, so they would be interested, and then helped them understand the machine more. We had a lot of educational content, not through us talking about ourselves, but through our sites actually showing how they use it. And then two, moving people somewhere so they could be a part of it, being an ambassador program or a community platform where they could learn more about the machine, become more tapped in, get to know other people in their area, et cetera. And so it kind of created this like groundswell of over the course of 2-3 years, we saw a lot of success and just we had a really high engagement rate on our social media because people felt like they were part of the strategy and that they were a part of something new and unique in the fitness industry that not others knew about.
How did you go about actually sort of, I guess, briefing the creators or the gym owners, I guess, in this? I mean, these are probably not content creators at heart, but you made them into content creators. How did you know what to ask for, or like, how did you tee them up to be successful? Because you aren't there, and you're dealing with people that may not necessarily be savvy when it comes to content? Like, how did you make them savvy, I guess?
The amount of times I sent that graphic that's like, don't film with your phone tilted to the side, film with your phone straight up to explain vertical video. But it was really as simple as that. We would create actual briefing docs, or I would just send them an email of like, here's how you're going to place your phone or where you're going to put it. I usually knew how the gym was set up or where they were, so I could actually give them tangible, like put the phone next to this thing. And then it was just bullets of, I want you to capture yourself doing this on camera. And then can you say this to camera? It wasn't actually as complicated or as hard as you would think. And usually you should expect the first couple pieces you get are going to be bad. Like they're not going to be good, and you can't judge them for that. They've never done it. But as you get to know somebody and work with them, that front work you put in of, hey, plug in this type of microphone, or I'm going to send you a microphone for your iPhone, and I just want you to plug it in, and I want you to put your camera here. And you do that front work of training them, then by the third time you're working with them, they get it, and it's just so fast. You don't need to do these big briefs. But big believer in front load the education, and then people pick it up. People are smarter than you think. We know what we're doing once we get the proper education.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this idea of almost like a scavenger hunt for people, where it's like, hey, here are the 10 clips that I need from you, and giving people the more framework you can. It? Yeah, why not? Especially with athletes, I feel like one of the biggest problems that brands create for themselves is that they don't give their athletes a very clear structure of what their expectations are. And so imagine going into a season with an athlete being like, hey, by the end of the season, like, we want you to get these 10 clips. And then that on the back end, those 10 clips are going to make these 4 formats or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, the more you actually give people, especially athletes who are the world's greatest at setting goals and achieving them, like, why wouldn't you give them a goal to achieve? And when it comes to content, like, how might you make it easy for them to chase down your goals, basically?
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point of, like, you mentioned gamification. We used a lot of incentive. So you weren't just making content for us. There was usually some sort of, we're going to be driving more people to your site. You're going to be featured on our Find a Proteus map. If somebody who comes to your site and tries it wants to buy, you get kickbacks. Like, we had very clear incentives, and that's where the ambassador program made that easier. That became like a content engine of, you join this, you become part of our sales force, basically. But it's not that much work on you. You just have to occasionally show somebody how to use the machine, and if it sells, you get a commission off of that. And then you just got to give me a couple clips of content. And then later on, once we had a bigger team and some budget, we actually flew out to some of our top performing facilities and would do shoots with them. So then we could do our formats. We had formats we would go out and film with them and package up and put on our Instagram, and then promoted them. So it just became this very mutually symbiotic relationship where they want to help you and you want to help them.
It's interesting how you looked at the rest of the business and found sort of hooks into that of like, hey, actually, we can put you as part of, essentially the sales team, and we're going to get actual data to work with to see if you're driving lots of traffic, driving lots of sales, whatever. And then we're going to come out and help you and make it even better. And we're going to like add even more fuel to the fire. You found ways where I feel like a lot of times social, it's like, yeah, send us a clip, and that's where it ends. You found ways to kind of really tie people into the success of the channel, success of the business, and to the success of their own businesses as a kind of downstream effect of that too. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. I think people forget, like, if you don't have budget, you have so many other things you can offer. Like, I offered a lot. I did like 1 million free webinars on social media to our facilities as a, like, if you want to help us, I'll train you on how to grow on your socials. And we actually saw some of our gyms take off on social from things we told them to do. And so you gain trust through, it doesn't have to always be monetary. It can be like, I'm just going to give you my knowledge and give that away to you for free. And if you can give me a clip for social, there's so much more you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the best stuff, doesn't cost much. It's just the intention, and that's rad.
Yeah.
So one of the articles that you wrote kind of based on everything you learned from that time was, how do I create content with a remote team? And that one kind of went pretty big on LinkedIn, and I'm going to put it in the show notes too, but you really kind of like laid out the different ways that you've kind of been successful building it up in the past. We could go into the article itself, into the different options or whatever, but I think what I really want to ask you is, like, what was, what was it like putting that out, and what was the feedback that you got, and how did that go? I mean, this is something that I feel like everybody is trying to understand how to, do more with less, how to build up their platform, outside of traditional media. And I think there's a mountain of golden nuggets in here of like the different strategies that you kind of laid out.
Yeah.
I don't know. Take that any way you want.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. When I came up with the idea for this newsletter, I was like, I don't know if anyone's going to care. Like, does anybody really think about this as much as I do? But I was seeing it pop up a lot because a lot of my clients, I work with a lot of tech, and a lot of tech is remote. And so there's these teams who are trying to grow on social, and they're like, we don't know, like, how are we supposed to do this? And I'm like, well, there's all these different strategies you could take. And I'm like, why am I not just putting this into a newsletter? Well, I'll just package this up and see if anyone cares. And the one I sent through my newsletter, LinkedIn, I got responses, but the one through my newsletter on my website, I got a ton of messages from, heads of marketing and things like that, just being like, whoa, like I had never thought of it this way. This is really interesting. It feels like this big problem of how do we get content, but nobody knows how to tactically solve it. And so that was the goal here. Is, to me, it can really just be broken down into 4 strategies, and then you pick the one that makes the most sense for the story you're trying to tell and the resources that you have. Because that's really, those are the 2 things that decide an execution approach to me for social media: your budget, your time, your energy, and then the story you want to tell.
You end that newsletter with basically the one strategy that never works. So I want to go down this rabbit hole of like, what are brands getting wrong across the board? Yeah.
In the case of this, the one strategy never works is expecting one person who can do everything. And I think this is shifting now. Like, the reason I was able to be successful at Proteus was because I convinced my CEO to hire me just on organic social, which was kind of a strange move looking back, that he hired an organic social expert before he hired a growth marketer, but it paid off. I was like, trust me, I can get this to grow on social media. I can get people interested. And it did work. There were months where half of our leads came through social media for people who had just seen our videos. And so the one thing I see that doesn't work is when somebody hires somebody and is in social, like the marketing manager, marketing coordinator, and they're like, we want you to run all of our Instagram, all of our TikTok, and we want you to grow it, and we want to see ROI and return. We want to actually see, people driving to website or whatever. But we also need you to do our newsletter. We need you to run paid ads, all these other marketing things that I did some of that at Proteus, but it was like maybe 5-10% of my job. That was never the priority. So it's not being resistant to having extra stuff. It's just realizing that you can't get return on investment if you're having one person do all of those things. Those are all specialized roles, especially now. And I feel like the tide's turning. I'm seeing this on LinkedIn, the sentiment and the way jobs are being titled, that this is kind of changing. People see that to get somebody who's going to be good at social media, they really should be focused on that. And if you want to see return and product sales go up, like let them do that thing and bring on somebody else who can run your newsletter or all the email marketing, et cetera, those things.
I feel like one of the things at Red Bull that everybody misses is that Red Bull, all of the things that we did were not for immediate return. It was all about sort of building the foundation, building the story, building the brand. And it wasn't about like a quick turn, buy one, get one on, product or in very few cases, even a product launch for like an edition or something like that. And I think a lot of brands hire, Red Bull people to be like, bring the stuff from Red Bull. Oh, and then we need you to do a Black Friday thing right now. And it needs to like go viral or whatever. And you're like, that's not how it works. Like, you have to be committed to the long term. You have to build this slow and steady, and then you can do all the other stuff. But you can't just like throw everything at the wall and expect it all to stick. Like you have to do this like slow, long build to have something like this. You don't just get to flip the switch and have Red Bull. You have to have that level of commitment. And if you're asking me a month into this, what the ROI right now is on an athlete or on a social post, like, you're in the wrong game, basically.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's the second biggest mistake is brands who are just starting think people care more than they do. We don't care about your product. Like, you haven't given us a reason to. So that's like a hurdle I see with a lot of brands who come to me, is they want this return, but it's like, nobody cares about you yet. And people don't care in the same way they did 5 years ago. So to get somebody to care about your brand, your content strategy on social media has to look a lot different than it did 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you could be very product pushy. You could do a lot of paid ads and you would gain followers who would also comment on your post. It's not the case anymore. Brands have to treat social media as either an educational place where they're being a source of a thought leader in a certain space, or as an entertainment place. Like, we're just like, stop taking it so seriously. Like, we're purely here to entertain and to get people to think about us when they need that product or want that thing. And that's where it starts. Then you become a Red Bull. Once you build that up so well, then you have that brand equity where people just know about you, and you can do and say whatever you want to an extent, and your content does well. But you can't do that right off the bat. You have to give them a reason to care. And that's usually giving away a lot of just value, either educationally or entertainment wise.
I have a phrase that I love, that's long-term consistency is better than short-term intensity. And that's, I think, exactly what you're saying, right? Like, you do this stuff and you build it over a long period of time. You have the recognition, you have the value, you have the relationship with your audience, and that gives you license to do these other things. You can't just do a 1 week sprint on the most hottest sales week of the year and hope for the best.
Yeah, you just like sent a light bulb off in my brain, because I've been really following some of the growth marketing approaches on social right now, just to see what some people are doing. And there's a lot of tactics in tech and places like that where they're like, we just want to move $10,000 worth of product in one weekend, or we want to get 10,000 downloads in one weekend. And so they're taking these like scammy social media approaches that work. I'm not going to say they don't work. They work. But the flaw in that is you have no brand equity. You're not building anything. Once that week's over, or that fake creator you made to make it look like you were pushing a weight loss app is done making their content, you have nothing. You have no credibility or depth. So as a brand, I can sometimes be, it's like a dangling carrot. You know, you see these people on these gurus on social media push these strategies of like, do this and you're going to have $10,000 in sales in one weekend. And you might, but you're not going to have a brand at the end of the day. You're just going to have one weekend that went well.
Well, I think this is a good time to kind of talk about sort of the evolution of your career as well. You ended up leaving Proteus Motion and launching Content by Kaylee, where you get a chance to work with, a lot of different brands kind of in every single world. I mean, you worked at Red Bull, you worked at Proteus Motion, but now, I've got to imagine your client base is sort of all over the place with just the ability of what you can kind of bring to the table. What is sort of the main stuff that you're working on right now? Like, what are you putting out in terms of content or in terms of work? How is that coming together?
Yeah, my emphasis has evolved over the past 2 years. You start the business as one thing, and then you kind of hone in as you go. And in the past year, I've found kind of the niche that really makes sense for me, and I feel like I have a lot to offer in that realm. And that's in the go-to-market or the we're stuck and we don't know where to go zone for startups specifically. I don't specialize per industry, because I think a good social media person doesn't need to. You should know storytelling, good content is the same regardless of the niche or the brand. And then also the things that bottleneck brands or hold people up, pretty universal. Like every brand I've worked with, they usually fall into like a set, this is what's happening. This is why they can't get the strategy to work, or their team's not functioning as high as they want to. So most of the brands who come to me and that I work with are either just about to launch their go-to-market, and they're like, we don't know what to do, or we don't know who to hire, or we have one person, but we don't know what we should be saying or putting out on social. And so I actually build the strategy and equip the team or help them work out some of their systems so they can launch. And then the other lane is brands come to me usually around acquisition or near acquisition, and they're like, we're stuck and it's not working anymore. Our team's not, like, things aren't moving smoothly. We don't really know what's happening. Our strategy's not converting, or we're seeing a huge tank in reach. What do we do? And then I come in and look at, one, how the team is set up, because that's one of the biggest bottlenecks is creative teams. You need to give them both room to be creative. They've got to have freedom and autonomy to go and try things. but they also need systems. And usually systems are where people get held up when you get to the bigger brands. The systems are just all over the place and highly inefficient or really duplicative work. And then the second part is actually, okay, well, what kind of content are we making, and is it converting, and does it work with what's happening on social? You'd be surprised even at the big brand level how much people kind of just lose the creativity and lose what's really resonating on social media right now, and just need an outsider to come in and like to say, okay, let's just throw out what we were doing prior and like throw ideas at the wall and really talk about like what would be interesting and fun content. And then we can talk about how to get it and make it within the resources and team structure we have.
Can you go back to that systems? I'd just love to know more about that. Like what kind of systems do brands or should brands specifically?
Yeah, I'm a systems girl. My biggest one is content planning and idea tracking. So social creatives aren't usually very organized, or there's usually one on the team who is, and then the rest are kind of just out doing ideas, running around. And to move quickly on social, you have to have a way to track everything. And so I'm a big proponent of Notion. I love Notion as a content planning system. And I use that with all my teams that I work with. I bring it on for them to track their ideas. How are you pitching? What's your pitch process for both low hanging and bigger format ideas? And how are you keeping track of those ideas? We do that within Notion. And then once we have the ideas, so we don't lose any, we know where everything is, how are we actually tracking where assets are in their status? Because generally a social team, it's not like big productions where you only have a couple going maybe at one time. You're usually working on like 20, 30 different things at once, just depending on when you're going to go shoot something with your phone or when an editor can turn something over. So having a way to actually make your weeklies or your one-on-ones useful. We're like, okay, this is where I'm being held up on this idea, or this coming up this month, we have all these things that we want to talk about as a brand. How do we do that interestingly? And what's the status of them? And then laying them all out on the calendar. So Notion's the big one, and giving people actual systems to pitch, execute, and plan out their content calendar. And then there's the smaller ones of like file management and how are you actually tracking what you're creating? Where's it going? How are you making it accessible to the rest of the organization so that, if somebody wants to run paid on something or utilize, like as you said, cross-pollination, and this is it in a different way. Like social should bleed into a lot of what the rest of the company is doing. And to make that easier, a lot of that comes down to, are we just actually tracking what we're doing properly and setting ourselves up correctly?
What was it at Red Bull? It was an Airtable that we used there.
Yeah. Oh God. That's where I learned it though. Airtable, that was what they had is when my brain, it clicked for me of Airtable was the first OG, and I still use it with certain brands depending on how they're set up. But Notion's usually the one I hand over because it has the best free version and now the best AI suite. So if you do want to pay for it, their AI suite is amazing.
So you have kind of like a Notion like file or format that you then, kind of collaborate with the individual brands on, and they're filling out stuff and you're tracking stuff, and that's sort of how it works. Because Notion, I've never actually really spent much time with it, but you can kind of set up. It's like Excel, take it to the next level, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you can build this like whiteboard in the way that you want it to have the right pieces, and people can kind of work together.
I would say it operates like you were an Airtable. So it can do what an Airtable does, where it's like an Excel that's filterable and the different tables communicate with each other. But then it also operates like a Google Doc. So everything you can comment in on everything. It makes it really easy for brainstorming. And that's why I've just gravitated towards it. Because one, you need all the tags and whatever, so you can properly create views for leadership and things like that. But for my creative team, like most of us we're just talking things out in the Google Doc, version of Notion. There's an entry form on every Notion where you can go and actually communicate back and forth. And I think it kind of unlocks a level that I haven't seen other planning platforms do. It's really good for people who are creative and might think all over the place, but we're going to put it in one place so we can see where everything is.
Very cool. Well, before we get to BPC, I'm just really curious. We talked so much about all the different things that kind of go into making this whole thing happen, but where do you see, social going, especially organic social? What is the future of all this stuff?
Yeah, I think in the micro level, the near term, we're going to see the platforms really differentiate. So, and we're already seeing it happen now. It used to be that you could do cross-posting strategies where you just, you make a TikTok and you post it on Instagram and you do
matching
shorts.
Luggage, right?
Yeah, everything. And you still kind of can, but I think in the next couple years, it's going to be totally different. Instagram is kind of doubling down on a more premium strategy. You're seeing people do actual scripted shows on there now. You're seeing brands do scripted shows, which I think is so fascinating and cool to see come back. It was kind of happening when Instagram TV was a thing, but now it's just a different caliber. I feel like a lot of kids are exiting film school and working for brands and doing scripted shows, which is very cool. TikTok is going to continue to go more lo-fi, talking to a friend on FaceTime. They're adding in they're kind of becoming the gamification platform too. Like TikTok Live for brands is a really cool opportunity to explore, and live shopping. I think they're just going to keep going down the more raw, approachable content route. And YouTube is also its own beast in itself. Like it's the monetization platform. It's a lot harder for brands to tap into, but for athletes and creators, it becomes the place where you can really sustainably monetize and grow a community. And so it's just going to be a lot harder to operate across all with one piece of content. You're going to have, and Red Bull was already like this when we were there. Every platform had its own team that kind of specialized in it. I think in the next couple of years, it's going to really move that direction. You're just going to see completely different strategies for all of these places. But on a much longer term vision, I think we're going to see more platforms enter. I think it's no longer going to be the big dogs. We're already seeing that, like things like Blue Sky and other competitor apps are popping in. I do think we're going to see more come in, and audiences are going to get more fractured. So as a brand, you're just going to have to decide, how do I want to tell my story and which platform makes the most sense for that, and go all in where you can.
So cool. I feel like we could go for another hour easily on all this stuff. I mean, we've only just scratched the surface, but there's some absolute wisdom in this pod, I think. And I think a lot of brands are going to, and athletes too. I mean, I think anybody who could take that concept of like building out your formats, understanding what you're trying to get across, what is the right platform, what is, like there's so much to be done, but like you can do this in a very organized way. You don't have to be just like shotgunning everything. You can focus in and have like a structured plan and your own version of the car wash, of like, here's how I'm going to take an opportunity and just rinse it for everything I possibly can and get 40 or 50 pieces of content out of a day. Like it is 100% possible for anybody to do. We did it with low to no funds, and people are doing it on a daily basis. And for the brands that do have resources, there's a great agency that they could just hire you and have you do it for them.
Yeah, that's true. Hire me.
Well, thank you for this. We always close the podcast with a segment called BPC, brand product content. A brand we've found, a product we love, or a piece of content that's really spoken to us. I'd love to hear, since you're the guest, I'll let you go first.
I'm going to cross over two categories, content and brand, because that makes sense as the social expert.
Yeah.
And we talked about a lot of strategies, a lot about different strategies. So I'm going to give you three brands that I think if there's anyone you should go look at right now who's doing interesting stuff, these are the three that I would look at. One is Sult, S-U-L-T. They're an electrolyte powder, and they've taken the strategy where they're founders and all the content, and they do a vlog style content. It's really interesting, and they've blown up just through it. The second would be Craft Mix. They're a mocktail company, powder. They are big on TikTok. They sell a lot through TikTok Shop, and they have a social media manager who's hilarious and just makes all their content. And the third would be the Rumi series by Built. This is a really good example of a scripted show on Instagram. I think the handle is Rumi, but you'll find it if you type in BILT Rumi series. It's a perfect example of tapping into scripted content to sell. I think they're a fintech company, so something so different, but they're very top of mind.
Interesting. That's cool. I'm going to check out all these. On the Craft Mix side, I was watching I'm sure you saw this, the brand Smashed, where the woman was like smashing the can, and they got up to like 500,000 followers. And then she ended up leaving, and then they went and like fully pivoted their strategy to something that's intentionally cringe and just people are falling off like
Nobody
crazy.
likes it.
It's such an interesting, the rise and fall of like a good social strategy, I guess. I don't know. Like that's the other thing too, is like you can't just do it once and then hope that it sustains. Like the consistency of it all is so necessary. And I feel like they kind of ran out of a direction to go, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing too of, can your strategy stick if somebody leaves?
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do next? Like, I'm so curious what Duolingo is going to do next now that their head of social went to DoorDash. So that's an interesting one to follow too.
That'll be a good one to keep an eye on. All right. My BPC is a little bit different than what I've had in the past. I was sitting in the theater to watch the new Tron movie this weekend, and actually instead of the previews, well, there were plenty of those too, there was actually an ad for the AI platform or product or whatever called Claude. And this was the first time like an AI ad really kind of hit for me. And the tagline was like, there's never been a better time to have a problem. And, you know, it goes into like how, you know, you have all this stuff at your fingertips. You know, you can solve problems now. Like you can dig into research, you can, you know, work through stuff. I don't know, like something about it really spoke to me. And then I ended up downloading Claude, and it felt more human. It felt more, I felt like there was more there on the analysis side and the conversational side. Like everything about it felt more human, which is kind of what really struck me about that ad. It wasn't about tech. It was about telling your story of like, there's never been a better time for you to need help. I don't know. Like something about that new Claude ad really, really spoke to me. And
do you use ChatGPT too? Or is this was your first?
Hardly ever. Like every now and then I'll put some stuff through it just to see, like check stuff, but I'm not using it. Like it's not on my phone. It, you know, like I'll sometimes go in and like just have it take a look at something for me, but I'm not a religious AI person. I've been sort of on the fence. I know there's opportunities where it could make things easier, but I just haven't found it yet. And I think one of the biggest things is that everything feels robotic, and this one just felt more considered. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Claude has such a better understanding of humans. Like their whole approach as a business, Anthropic, is like, we know humans want to use this to make their lives easier versus some of the other approaches feel very doomsday. So
I'd feel like just, you know, whether it comes to social or AI, I feel like at the end of the day, all this stuff is about like people connecting and communities coming together, and the intention of that is what really drives it. You know, like good social content really resonates with people and their emotions and their feelings and their thoughts. And I think that's what made this one kind of stand out different for me too, is that it just resonated on a different level. And so I was more interested in like, I'm going to like take the next step on this one and see what happens. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Follow along and see what happens.
I don't know if I'm going to be an AI, like, you know, whatever, but this, I don't know. I'm just really interested to see. I think my biggest thing with AI is like, I don't know what questions I need to ask or what problems I'm trying to solve yet, but now I know where I'm probably going to turn when that moment inevitably arises.
The thing is, once you open the can, you can't close it, is what I felt with AI. Once you start using it, it makes your life so much easier. Things become faster.
Ready for that. I could definitely use a little assist. Amazing. Well, Kaylee, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for being on the pod and sharing your knowledge with us. I'm going to put all your stuff in the show notes I'm sure there's a handful of people at brands being like, we need to talk to her. So thanks for being here for this. And just pumped to have you on.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so much.